am today delivering to each of you copies of the executive budget, which anticipates the need for no new taxes, reflecting my suggestions for spending in the 1972-73 biennium, accompanied by an extended analysis of these recommendations. Second, in another written message, I am summarizing a number of my suggestions for new laws, amendments to existing laws, and administrative procedures of general interest. Third, I am hereby noting that other significant topics will be covered in special messages as promptly as they can be prepared or when a reason for them develops.
Well, it's a very complicated, complex new innovation in state finance. $450 million of general revenue bonds to pay for the state spending for the next 2 years to be repaid for the next 20 years. I've got some serious problems about whether this is a sound financial approach to state government. I was very proud to see that he supported the federal government assuming a 100% cost of the welfare program. I hope this can become a political reality during the next 2 years.
The Australian government as a government doesn't take any position on long hair. That's a matter for the boys to decide for themselves. If they're of good character, they'll be welcome in Australia. We wouldn't want to have young men coming in who are going to bring in drugs and propagate drugs and that sort of thing, but long hair as such doesn't give us any problem.
Sir James, what are your immigration policies?
Basically, anybody who can contribute to Australia's life, to our economic opportunities, is welcome in Australia.
He rounded the corner and stopped. We didn't even know that cop was behind us, and I was getting out, and that other one saw the red lights and said, "Hey, there's the cops behind us." So
that's the first time you saw the police car. They did not pull over because they thought the police were stopping them, right?
Yeah, that's the first time, because we didn't know it was behind us. And I said, "Well, y'all want me to get out and just go on?" And they said, "Yeah, go on. You ain't no trouble." So I got out and I walked on past the police car, and when I did, they signaled me in, that officer and that kid in the white shirt. And I got in and told him my story. You know, he said, "Weren't they gonna let you out?" And I said, "No. They thought I wanted off at Hampton, but I wanted off on Stems where I catch more rides." And when he got through questioning me, I was getting out of the car, and that guy walked up, and
what guy? The guy who'd been driving?
The driver, the big old dude, and I heard him, the cop, say, "Get your hand out of your pocket," you know, when I was getting out. He said that twice, and then he kicked the door open. I heard him say it twice.
Who did you think he was talking to at first?
I thought he was talking to me, because I looked down, and I didn't have my hands in my pocket, and I looked across the car, and I saw that guy walking up, and I saw that cop reaching for his gun. And then he just shot him twice, and then he shot another time.
The trouble with the telephone service in Garland is that you can't get the people that you call for. We can't dial across town satisfactorily, let alone Metro service.
How does the Metro service work in Garland since it was installed?
We feel that the Metro service is comparable to the service we've been receiving for our local service, where we dial 2, 3, 4 times before we get the correct number, where we dial, and in the middle of our dialing, the telephone goes blank and we get a dial tone again, and all kinds of trouble getting people to answer their telephone because it doesn't ring for some reason.
I think it's a fair complaint. I've stated that to the city, to the council, and to anyone I could find ever since I've been here. We have a tremendous program into effect to overcome these deficiencies. We think we're well down the road toward doing so. We think a majority of the citizens of this community will agree with us. And we know that very shortly we'll have a very fine telephone exchange.
Where is Howard Hughes today?
I think probably in some nursing home on the West Coast somewhere, being treated by some of his own staff that he's had on the payroll for many years.
Would you say then that he is in failing health or possibly a terminal condition?
I definitely think he's in failing health. In fact, the last report that we had on him, which was on the 12th or 14th of November, the doctor's report showed that he was ill at the time.
What about reports that he is in the Bahamas?
Well, we've heard about those reports, and when I say we've heard out, I've worked for Mr. Mayhew for 3 years under him for the Hughes, Nevada operations. We did the public relations for them. Mr. Hughes supposedly was in the Bahamas. Well, we didn't believe it, and Mr. Mayhew sent close to 45 to 50 people nationally looking for him, and we had 6 or 7 people in the Bahamas, and in the room supposedly that Mr. Hughes was living. The 4 days that our people were there before they got caught, I mean, there wasn't a sound out of that room.
The movies we're using would not all be called horror films as such. They have horror elements in them. Boris Karloff, I think, made a very interesting definition of these. He felt that the films he made were really not horror films at all, but rather terror films. The idea being that the word horror was somewhat overused by Hollywood. The difference in the two terms, according to him, was that at the basis of horror, one felt disgust, revulsion, a somewhat static sense, whereas in terror, the basis of terror was fear, especially fear of the unknown. Now, filmmakers use both of these, usually together. One does not often find a pure horror film or a pure terror film in that sense of the words.
What has been the response? What has been the response on the class so far?
Well, so far we've had, I don't know how many people have signed up. Quite a few, I believe. I did look over the list. I believe they were mostly girls.
I recommend to you that we appropriate state welfare funds now for only the first 10 months of the next biennium, which will be to the beginning of the federal fiscal year 1973. By then, it is my belief that our efforts will have been successful and our welfare programs will be federally funded.
Well, it's pretty obvious. It looks like there's some political witch hunting being injected into a commercial transaction. As you well know, it's a lawsuit in the civil courts. It involves some 24 different parties. I am not directly a party to the lawsuit, nor is there any one of the members of this House directly involved as a party to the lawsuit. And I think it's most unfortunate that a man would see fit to make such a statement.
Do you think that that there's enough there that you need to have an investigative committee, as has been suggested?
Well, I plan to certainly talk with the members of the House. I plan to visit with the Executive Department, and we'll probably visit with the Attorney General's office. We're primarily interested in working with anyone who can assist us in clearing up this matter. And I might add here that in my visit with the security people, which was strictly voluntarily, they said, Mr. Speaker, if you had any advanced knowledge of any transactions in this company, it certainly wasn't reflected in your statement, because I've actually lost money in my dealings with the company, and I've always had to work hard to try to make an honest living. And in my mind, I was a good faith purchaser. I lost some money, and I hope that we can clear the matter up as soon as possible.
I think I should be candid and say to you that Congressman Wilbur Mills, who is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee of the House, and Johnny Burns of Wisconsin, who is the ranking Republican member on the House Ways and Means Committee, are opposed to the surrender of spending power while keeping the taxing power at a federal level. However, over on the Senate side, Senator Russell Long, the chairman of the Finance Committee of the Senate, and Senator Wally Bennett of Utah, the ranking Republican, I think are far more amenable to revenue sharing. And I think, generally speaking, that the climate in the Congress is going to be more favorable. The reason I think it's going to be more favorable is because the tremendous amount of pressure that people like you all have brought to bear on your members of Congress to take a favorable attitude toward this.
To me, it's an internal matter of the House to resolve, plus the fact I think it's only right, since we are all under criticism, the entire legislature is under the criticism, that we know exactly what members are involved, which ones bought this stock, and I think their names should be made public.
Do you have information that has not yet come out regarding this as to what others could be involved, or just how deeply the involvement might be?
No, sir, I don't have any names that, I have no knowledge of who is involved, other than the ones that have admitted publicly that they did borrow money from the Sharpstown Bank and did buy this insurance company stock.
I was not aware that those people in question were trading in that particular stock.
You don't feel that your salesman may have been impressed that the governor was trading with Ling & Company and maybe brought it to someone's attention?
I can recall knowing that the governor opened an account here. I was pleased and would still be pleased to open an account for the governor or any such high official. Beyond that, the details of any activities in his account should have been held confidential by us. I never looked into it, and to this date, I am not aware of any wrongdoing by those people named.
Then there was no natural curiosity among executives of the company to see how the governor was doing?
Not by myself. I can't speak for other executives, and I would like to make it clear I have not had a personal relationship or a business relationship with any of the individuals or entities named in the suit other than the employees of Ling & Company.
Did you personally deal in the stock of National Bankers Life?
Never on any occasion.
First, there's no question that there are certain items that are crucial at this time. The jail is overcrowded by approximately 100 over what they planned the capacity. If anyone comes to the courthouse and looks in the halls, they'll see that we've had to stack records in the hallway and partition them. And these are records that we're required by law to keep. There's a severe problem with reference to the district attorney's office. His office is split between two buildings, and the people are demanding stricter law enforcement and prosecution, and at the same time I feel that they'll see the need to give him adequate facilities to comply with their request. And because of these needs, I feel that they will approve it. And if they approve it at this time, certainly the expense of the improvements will be less than they will be in the future, and the need will continue and grow.
Can this be done without a raise in taxes?
The commissioners and the auditor have studied this problem. They indicate that they anticipate if the county continues to grow at its present rate that there will be no need for additional taxes.
I'd like to see them get into a program of informing the students and possibly even a lot of adults into understanding the methods of police action.
Tom, now in joining this organization, do you feel that you are maybe going against the grain of some of today's students?
No, sir, not really. I feel that the majority of the students would like the police and would like to get to know them, and I think possibly that the people that don't feel that way do that out of ignorance or just because it's kind of becoming popular now to call the police pigs or whatever. And if we get more students involved, then it'll be better. You know, the police will understand the police better, and we'll have more people.
Debbie, you're going to be secretary of this organization, and there is a great deal of militants, not only on college campuses, but on high school campuses. Is there such a group at Bryan-Adams?
Oh, yes, definitely. There's a bunch of kids who think that the police are out to get them no matter what, you know, and I have lots of friends who feel this way, and I'm trying to more or less correct this by being in this organization so I can present to them that policemen are friendly and everything.
Mr. Golds, what will your office do here in Dallas?
We will procure printing for all federal agencies in this region. It is not a printing office, it is a procurement office to work with commercial contractors, purchasing printing from these contractors. This region will consist of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana.
Not at this time.
How would you approach the City Hall problem?
I think some things that have happened lately have indicated rather graphically that having various departments scattered all over the city is very inefficient. I really don't believe that this is Scott McDonald and his people's fault. I think that certainly there is a geographical factor involved here that must be consolidated and be brought back together. The question becomes, do you want that city hall and that design?
The search headquarters is being moved from Carswell Air Force Base to Little Rock Air Force Base in Arkansas. Most of the 20 aircraft now committed to the search are of the C-130 class, and Carswell simply is not geared to maintain them. They're normally stationed at Little Rock, and it's cheaper to service them there. This matter of cost is becoming of some serious importance in the search for the missing FB-111. I've tried for 2 days to get someone to answer questions which I consider rather basic. How could the 111 have dropped from radar contact when it was transponder equipped? It was, after all, only the third time the plane had been in the air. Who takes responsibility for not making certain that it stayed within radar range? At this point, no one is willing to take that responsibility or even to point a finger. The cost of the search is mounting. The taxpayers are shelling out more money than any of us will ever know, just trying to find a plane which should never have been lost in the first place. Other questions. What about a detailed flight plan? Does it make sense to send up an airplane, particularly one with the troubled reputation of the F-111, on a flight without knowing exactly where it's going and exactly what it's going to do? Nobody will answer my question, was a flight plan in detail filed? And if one was filed, why didn't it serve the purpose for which a flight plan is designed? Should the system perhaps be changed? And one final question. In view of the fact that the airplane obviously could be lost from radar contact, and whether a flight plan was filed or not, obviously that did not serve the purpose of keeping up with the airplane, then why was not a chase plane sent along with the FB-111? Would it not have been a lot cheaper and a lot simpler to send another plane along to observe its flight during this acceptance flight than to pay the cost of flying 20 search planes now to try to locate the plane? And one final point. There are a lot of high-ranking people here at Carswell Air Force Base who are really wondering where that plane actually went. Jerry Taft, Channel 8 News on the move at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth.
With Lynn Crossley and the other people in the city departments.
Can you see an increase in either the sales tax or a value-added tax?
No, I would not. No, I certainly would not. I think the taxes that have to be that have to come should be luxury taxes.
Well, I would say so. After our last encounter in Fort Worth, I think we can approach that game just a little bit different than we would Omaha Knights.
Tell us the difference between the Knights and the Wings.
Well, the Knights are a very well-balanced team. They have a strong goaltender and a strong defense corps, and their forwards are, most of them are experienced, and their young draft choices are of very talented. So they have a very well-balanced hockey team.
Is Fort Worth a more physical club than Omaha?
No, I wouldn't say so. I would say they're both about equal as far as physical is concerned. I think that we should be the physical club in the league, and this is what's been one of our problems lately. We haven't been as physical as we had earlier in the year, and when you're skating and hitting, and sure, you're going to take penalties, this is going to be the key and the success to your rise in the standings.
Well, do you think the last game over there is going to cause any kind of an emotional peak Saturday night?
Well, I think so. I just hope that our players aren't looking towards Saturday night and forgetting about Friday night, which is a very important game to us. I think that we must take them a period at a time and a game at a time, and I think that we should look for Omaha first and Fort Worth next. As I said before, I think to some of the newspapers that I shouldn't have to say a great deal to my fellows at our game meeting on Saturday about our Fort Worth game after the resounding defeat that they handed us in Fort Worth, and it was a physical game in more ways than one, and I think that they're ready and prepared for Fort Worth, and I just hope that I can convince them that they must be prepared for Omaha first.
I don't believe so. I think the Echeverria government will continue policies very similar to the Diaz Ordaz administration and to previous administrations. I think there'll be a lot more dynamic approach and a lot more effort, particularly in the rural sector, to bring the campesino more into the national economy. But I don't think there will be any marked change.
Is the Communist Party growing in Latin America as you see it?
Well, I'd rather restrict myself pretty much to Mexico because that's the country I know, and of course there the Communist Party plays a very small role and is not increasing.
I know you all are wondering why I've called you here today, and it is my pleasure to take this occasion to announce for mayor in the April 6th election.
Mr. Wise, will you seek the endorsement of either the CCA or the CRG?
I would like to have the endorsement of any organization, providing, of course, it's not really radical in nature. Yes, I would accept the endorsement of either the CRG or the CCA. However, let me emphasize, I would not run on either of their tickets.
Do you have a preference of the two groups?
No, I have not. I would like to have them both.
What do you see as sources of revenue for the city of Dallas in the future?
As sources of tax revenue?
Yes.
That I really don't know at this time. The one thing that I mentioned a moment ago, I think that type of thing is going to have to be pursued, such as the nickel on the mixed drink and so forth. I don't think the garbage tax is a good one, because I feel this is really a cover-up sort of thing.
Civilizations die and are buried, covered by the shifting sands of time, lost in the ages of antiquity. And yet, what this building shall house, the great collections, the words of man recorded, will survive through all the ages to come, to help future generations understand our times, our people, our problems, and hopefully profit by our mistakes, in order that future generations might be able to mold and to build and to pattern a better way, a better life, a better means of living one with another.